Invasive species are always going to be a problem in communities like Greater West Bloomfield and across the board, but they're becoming a growing problem, especially economically in our local area and beyond, costing an estimated $26 billion in economic damage on an annual basis across North America, according to experts. So which invasive species are common problems for us here in Greater West Bloomfield, and what can we do to get rid of them or to lessen their effect on our local wildlife? Joining us is an expert on that, West Bloomfield Park's Naturalist Supervisor, Lauren Azoury. Thank you so much for being with us, Lauren.
Thanks, Tyler. Although it's a kind of a gloom and doom subject, so maybe next time we can talk about something more happy and exciting.
There's always something happy to talk about in our natural landscapes here in Greater West Bloomfield, but we want to keep it that way, and the best way to do that is to kind of get rid of or alleviate the effect that these invasive species have on our local wetlands, woodlands, and wildlife. So what are some of the more common invasive species that tend to be problematic in Greater West Bloomfield?
Well, I would think the one that most would be able to recognize, because we are so rich in water here and water bodies, is Phragmites. It's the really tall one, over 8 feet tall, taller than all of us, with the big fluffy tuft on the top, and grows in wetland areas and roadsides and right-of-ways. That is the one that, you know, we continue to battle, and it feels like a never-ending battle. But there are things that you can do if you have small populations of Phragmites, and that's a plant. But obviously invasives can be insects as well. But yeah, Phragmites is probably our most common and most recognizable one in our area.
And so what effect do they tend to have, the Phragmites, on those wetlands or other plant life that is natural to our wetland areas in our community?
Yeah, so by definition, an invasive obviously is not from around here. So that means that there is no natural cycle to control it. No animal in our area is recognizing these plants as something that they could eat or help control. So there's no way of like reining it in naturally here because it's not from around here. So that's one problem, is that there's no natural control. The other problem is that it crowds out other natural species, which provide food and habitat for our other animals. But another huge issue that Phragmites is concerning is that it actually alters the pH of the water that it grows in. So eventually, if the patch gets large enough, it will alter the pH, which means that frogs can't live there, which means that all the beautiful water lilies that we have can't live there, which means that all of the water areas that you live in West Bloomfield for will look very different than they do now. So it can change in a lot of different ways. The other reason that it gets a lot of attention is because it is so tall and does tend to grow in disturbed wet areas like road right-of-ways, is that it can be a traffic problem because it will obstruct views around turns and in the middle of medians.
Yeah, I see that all the time in certain places in our community that, you know, at some points of the year you can kind of take a look to your left, take a look to your right, and you're okay. But otherwise, you're kind of gambling on the traffic patterns, and that obviously is a big problem. There's so many others that are more ecological as opposed to human to human or with our machines. But you know, you kind of got to go back to the point of origin. You would think that ports of entry would be where a lot of these invasive species get in to the United States, but how do they get into Michigan and more specifically into our local area so far inland?
Yeah, so it just depends on, obviously, the species. But while we're talking about Phragmites, that is grown and travels by seed head. So if you mow a road right-of-way here in our area, and then you don't clean your blades off and you have Phragmites seeds on it, then you might go to the next neighboring community and mow there and spread the seeds. So cleaning your equipment, and this is something that the Road Commission does now. They do clean their blades and equipment when they're mowing Phragmites. And you're also mowing at the right time of year, so you're not mowing when the seeds are ready to actually spread, when they're still enclosed in the plant. So knowing the life cycle of what you're trying to control is really important. But as far as what you can do in your own homes, if you're hiking in our parks and you went up north or to another state, we ask that you please wipe off your boots. It's simple as that. You can carry a lot of seeds just in the treads of your shoes. So cleaning your equipment and not moving firewood. I'm sure you've heard that before. If you've ever heard of the emerald ash borer years ago, was a big invasive species. I feel like people think that the not moving firewood is a ruse. Like they think, oh, the campground just wants me to buy their firewood, that's why. But there is actually really a very environmental reason why, and it's because many invasive species insects travel in firewood. So if you are going to go up to the Upper Peninsula, where maybe it's a little more pristine there, and you're going to bring firewood from here, you could be bringing egg masses from our invasive species that we have here that might not have made their way up there yet. So cleaning your equipment, not moving firewood, and knowing what to look for is really important.
Lauren Azoury is with us, the Parks Naturalist Supervisor at West Bloomfield Parks. More information on their programs and different environmental learning opportunities for you and yours, wbparks.org, or follow them on Facebook at WB Parks. We're talking about invasive species becoming a growing problem across the U.S., having a massive economic impact across North America, but it's not uncommon to us close to home here in Greater West Bloomfield either. And we know that different units of government sometimes will enact controlled burns. We've had that most recently in West Bloomfield just a few years ago at Jacob's Landing nearby us here in West Bloomfield Township. But for the average everyday resident of Greater West Bloomfield, they run into some of these invasive species that if they're able to identify them. What preventative measures can they take to either remove them or prevent them from continuing to spread throughout the area?
Yeah, I mean, I know that we all travel with our boats if you have a boat and you live on a waterway. So cleaning your boats at a boat wash station before you bring it back home to your home lake or to a northern lake or a different state. So cleaning your boats is really important. But also, some of these species can be controlled by hand pulling them. So just knowing what time of year to do it and how to do it. Even though Phragmites is almost as deep as it is tall, so the roots go very, very deep. So you might be able to hand cut. I know that certain chemicals get a bad reputation, but it has been proven, unfortunately, for a lot of invasive species, plants, that there are certain chemicals that can control them when applied properly at the right time of year. But really also just learning what they are. I have so many people that will come to me and say, oh my gosh, there's a beautiful purple plant growing by my lake. And I'm like, oh, does it have a tall stalk with little purple flowers? That's purple loosestrife, that's invasive. Like, even though the flower is pretty to us, it will take over your lake and change the whole atmosphere there. So you might want to just pull that up. So just getting to be a little bit more aware of what to look for. wbparks.org/invasive species. We've got a great website with lots of good visuals. You're also welcome to always send our naturalist team any photos of something that might be concerning to you, and we can help you identify it. But yeah, just being a little more aware of, even though it looks pretty, doesn't mean that it belongs here, and it can really be in a negative effect. As far as insects go, there's a big one around right now, and that's our spotted lanternfly. So you can be on the lookout for egg masses right now. That's the time of year. Spotted lanternfly is a little newer of an invasive species. Have you heard of it yet, Tyler?
I have heard of it. I haven't seen one. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to tell what it looks like, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, so this is the time of year that they have laid their egg masses, and we're looking for those. The adults won't emerge again until June, July. They'll be like little tiny little baby bugs. But right now we're looking for the egg masses, and they will lay their eggs on almost anything. So just keep it aware. If you see something that doesn't look quite normal, maybe even on your patio furniture, they like to lay eggs, on your vehicles, on any really like hard surface, and obviously on the bark of trees as well. And you can scrape those egg masses off and destroy them. It seems counterintuitive because I obviously am always a proponent of protecting wildlife. But when it comes to invasive species, the best thing is to help control their population so that our native wildlife can thrive here. So if you have any idea of something that might be like kind of like, let me see if I got a good picture for you I can share. This is quite the poster here, the Stop the Invader. But the egg masses are kind of, they're about ½ inch. And they can be shiny when they're first laid in the fall time, but right now they might even look more like this, like a crackled little like cake frosting, maybe old cake crackled frosting is a good description of how it is. Okay. But if you see that, you want to take a picture of it, and then you want to scrape it off and destroy it. And the photo helps us to know better where this is spreading. So it was first found here in Michigan in Pontiac at a greenhouse because it's attracted to another invasive species, which is tree of heaven. And so if you buy landscaping plants like Tree of Heaven, definitely be checking those plants in your backyard to make sure you don't have egg masses on them. But also check your patio furniture, check your vehicles, and look for these egg masses. Once you take that photo, make sure you share it. There's a thing that the Michigan DNR does that helps us locate and identify, and it's called Eyes in the Field. So obviously, all of us naturalists and scientists can't be everywhere in everyone's backyards. Of course. And especially in West Bloomfield, we're fortunate. A lot of people share with me that they live up, their property lives right up to a wetland or a forest area. And so really, we need everyone's eyes to help look for these things. So if you see something, you should report it. It's a quick, easy 5 minutes on a website, even less than that probably, to say, oh, I think I found something. And that really helps us get good data and where these spotted lanternfly might be traveling to.
And a lot of those you can find even more information on, kind of know what you're looking for that's common to our area, as Lauren said, wbparks.org/invasive species. Lauren Azoury, West Bloomfield Parks naturalist, with us on the Splash Live. Before we let you go, anything else that we should know on this topic as we speak today?
Well, you had mentioned the economic, right? The economic negativity of where we spend a lot of money on controlling invasives. The reason we want everyone to start learning about the spotted lanternfly and what to look for is that they really attack and thrive on ornamentals like trees of heaven, but also on grapes and apples. And we live in Michigan, and that's our like #1 and #2 crops here in northern Michigan. So definitely some concern in the agriculture industry here with these spotted lanternflies. So keep an eye out for those egg masses and help everyone out. And then, obviously, a great way to prevent this is to plant native species. So we always promote native species and more beneficial to the environment plants. So look out for our native plant sale in the spring. And then we were talking about how a way you can help out, right? So you can hand pull a lot of these. One invasive species we didn't talk about today, but is really common in our area is garlic mustard. Yep. It's a small little plant that can spread. It becomes a monoculture, takes over, but it's easier for us to control because we don't have to use chemicals. We just need a lot of people's hands to help us. So we do a garlic mustard gatherers in May, where the community comes together and we meet on the trail. And we kind of do a lively competition of who can pull the most, prizes for the most pull. But we've seen such an impact of that over the years. Our 4th graders in West Bloomfield School District have come out year after year to help us pull. In the areas that they really focused on now, there's a lot of great natives growing there, and the garlic mustard has really gone down. So we've seen the impact of what we can do in our community together with that. So definitely come join us for a garlic mustard pull in the spring here.
All of that can be found on wbparks.org or follow them on Facebook at WB Parks for even more information. Lauren, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Tyler.